Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules YouTube channel. This is our Grand Final review episode. Grand Final was yesterday. I've watched it 2.5 times since then. I don't know if I'll watch it again, to be honest. It wasn't the most exciting game of all time, but we're going to review it. We're going to look at how the teams went. We'll have a look at player ratings for every player on the field. And, yeah, just all of that stuff. Repping the Tassie Devils today. And, yeah, let's jump into it. I can totally talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this season and what you think of the Brisbane Lions winning the 2024 Premiership. Check out all the socials. Tons of Twitter been going on this weekend. A lot of TikTok content. Instagram, I'm trying to grow a bit, so go give it a follow on all of them. As always, thanks for being here. Let's jump into the grand final from this year. Sydney v Brisbane. What more can we say? It was an absolute flogging from about halfway through the second quarter through to the end of the match. It was just one-way traffic. It was 7 points with 13 minutes to go in the second quarter, and then even after that, with less than 10 minutes to go, it was 11-point margin. And then it was just Brisbane. They kicked straight late in the second quarter. They kicked 6 goals in the last 10 minutes of the first half, and just kind of put them away in that 10-minute period. Which, I mean, a lot of games this year have been won in short periods of the game. It's probably what Sydney have done best this year, winning games in just little spurts, but they had that happen against them this time, which is disappointing for the Swans, but massive for the Brisbane Lions, no doubt about it. So they end up with a pretty neat little scoreline for the people with OCD. 9-6-60 for the Swans to 18-12-120, exactly double the score. In every way. We'll have a look at some of the stats. Obviously, Sydney went way below par with their points for, way over par for points against, and the opposite of Brisbane, they just really turned it on. Accuracy at goal. We said that this was going to be a key part of the game because it's an area that Brisbane have kind of struggled with, but they kicked really straight in front of goal yesterday. Meanwhile, Sydney did not kick as accurately, wasted some opportunities for sure. Forward efficiency is an interesting stat here because 38.8% is a really low for the Sydney Swans. But we'll jump on to Brisbane's side of things first, because that number is 66.7%. So 66.7% of the time that Brisbane went forward into the 50, they generated a shot at goal. That is their highest forward efficiency for the year, by quite a bit, and the only other time they got close to that was I think it was whatever round they played Richmond at the Gabba, which was like round 11ish, somewhere around there, when they won by 100 and something points. So just a really outstanding performance forward of the ball by Brisbane, which they're not known for dominating forward efficiency. I mean, I guess they are. They had a real rough start early year, but that was mainly due to accuracy. But this one, they converted their opportunities and they, kick straight. It's crazy how good you can look when you do that. Meanwhile, for the forward efficiency on the side of Sydney, there's only twice before this game that they'd gone below 40%, and it'll be no surprise that they were their 2 worst performances of the year. Excuse me. The first one was against the Bulldogs in round 20 when they lost by 39 points, and the other time they went below 40% was when they lost by 112 points to Port Adelaide. So a disappointing time for them to bring out their worst forward efficiency of the year. Meanwhile, that defensive efficiency from Brisbane, they were just locked in. Everyone on the field. We're going to go through the player-by-player ratings shortly, but they were just locked in. You look at some of these stats, certainly the next few lines. Inside 50 differential, not much margin between the two teams, just +2 to Brisbane. If you're getting that close to Brisbane in inside 50s, you should be getting close to them because they're a team that dominates inside 50s, but typically they just don't convert them into goals, whereas this time they really did. Clearance differential actually went the way of Sydney, thanks to +3 from stoppage clearances. We'll get to scoring in a minute because that is a fascinating read, some of the score sources. Contested footy +2 to Brisbane, so not much difference there. But uncontested football +78 for Brisbane. They just had the ball on their terms all day long. No doubt about it. They just did whatever they wanted all day. It was just a domination in that regard. The tackle differential, this is another fascinating part of the game. +19 for Brisbane, who are typically a team that do not win the tackle count all that often. And yet, they absolutely smacked it here. In fact, going into this game, they'd only won the tackle count 6 times for the season. So this was just the 7th in 27 games that they've won the tackle count. And they won it by +19, which is a huge difference. No doubt about that. And Sydney, I don't know where their pressure went in this game, to be honest. It certainly wasn't anywhere. Uncontested footy leads on to this next stat. Disposal efficiency. 81% for Brisbane is absurd. That is so high. They average around about 72.7. You got to take into account different conditions like wet weather football and such, but still, so far above par for this game. 81%. Third time this year that Brisbane have gone over 80%, and the other 2 times were 2 of their better wins for the year, both up at the Gabba. So, a really outstanding performance here. Sydney, 70.2, probably a little bit lower than what you'd expect them to get, but they just couldn't control any football all day. When they got the ball, Brisbane had them under the pump, and it caused errors and issues all day long for the Swans. In the end, just not good reading for Sydney at all here. We'll jump into score sources, or first quarter-by-quarter analysis. As we said in our preview video, if you have watched that, Brisbane dominate the first quarter this season, averaging +12.7 points per first quarter. Well, they did it even better here. Well, not actually better in the first quarter, but better in the rest of the game. +8 in the first quarter yesterday. Which, I mean, is roughly about where you kind of expect it. To be honest, Brisbane's best quarter, Sydney's worst, typically. But the second and third quarter is where Sydney typically dominate, but Brisbane just controlled it. As we said, they kicked the last 6 goals of the second quarter in that last 10 minutes just to blow the game wide open. Third quarter, they came out and just continued it on. Fourth quarter, game was over. Sydney won it, but I wouldn't read too much into that because it was well and truly over by 3/4 time. Obviously, +46 at half-time for the Lions was an outstanding result. Way more than they could have expected. +14 in the second half, very solid as well, because their second halves are certainly not as good as their first halves. It's been the case all year long. Now the score sources, this is where it's interesting, I think, the most about this game. So neither team scored from kick-ins, probably about... I mean, you don't expect to score that much from kick-ins, but neither team scored. But stoppages was huge for both teams, with both teams going over. Brisbane +16 from stoppages, meanwhile Sydney +5 from stoppages. So, a net win there for Brisbane, obviously, but Sydney were okay in that regard. But in the turnover stakes, this is where Sydney failed miserably. They scored 18 points less. Just ignore offense and defense because that's not actually what those numbers are. I think that's what they usually score. What they scored here and what they usually score. Massive overs though. 72 points from turnovers is insane from Brisbane. Just 27 from Sydney is a really low number. So that is probably the ball game right there. That is a huge margin. But then you go into whereabouts in the field it was generated. Defensive half, Brisbane dominated that transition game, 41-12. An area that Sydney typically are very good at, running the ball and getting scores from it from the back line. They just couldn't generate anything here. Forward half, Brisbane also dominated 47 to 28. But the crazy thing here is that centre bounce scoring. Both teams scored huge. Sydney got 3 goals, 220, which is double what they usually get from centre bounce scoring. And Brisbane got 5 goals, 232, which is almost triple what they normally score. So an outstanding bit of centre break work from both teams in all honesty, but especially Brisbane. I did suggest that scoring from centre bounces was going to be something that Brisbane needed to watch out for, because Sydney can do it really well, but in the end, they just beat them at their own game with that. They just dominated that. So, huge amount of scores from the centre bounce. But the biggest thing that you'll take from this screen right now is that turnover number. 72 points to 27 is a huge margin from turnovers. We'll now jump into our player-by-player analysis and have a look at who was best and who was worst. We'll start with the Sydney defenders. So, moving from left to right, obviously we got the players. Then we got the all Aussie rules rating. It's the rating system that I do every game for every player. It's not perfect, but I think it goes okay. Then we got the official AFL.com rating / champion data rating for each player. Then my player rank based on the AAR rating on the field for the day. And then we've given them a little grade out of 10 to finish on that end piece there in that final column. So we'll start with Sydney defenders. We'll work our way through Sydney players, and then we'll jump into the winning team, Brisbane. Nick Blakey, he was solid. He probably wasn't at his best, but he still did okay. Player rank of 11th on the ground. Not terrible. Their best defender, though. I gave him a 7 out of 10. Lewis Millican, I think, was okay. He defended pretty well on the most part. He was under siege for most of the day, but did okay. Florent, I think he was okay. He was a good ball user. He got plenty of it. He got beaten overall, though, in all honesty. Dane Rampy was solid without doing anything exciting. Matt Roberts was average. Tom McCartan just was a nothing day from him. Harry Cunningham was really bad. I gave him a 1 out of 10. You can see all the ratings for the players as we go, but he just was nowhere out there on the field all day. Ran around for 100 minutes and you wouldn't even know he was out there. Jump into the Sydney forwards, and this is a bleak reading. Was the delivery to them perfect? No, absolutely not. But, I mean, they only had 2 less inside 50s than Brisbane, and their forwards just couldn't generate anything. Robbie Fox was solid. I gave him an 8.5, and in all honesty, he was probably Sydney's second or third best player yesterday. So he was solid. Hayden McLean, once again, didn't do much. He didn't do anything terribly wrong, but he didn't do much. Papley popped up for a goal in that first quarter, but after that was pretty quiet. James Jordan, barely saw him. Will Hayward kicked the first goal and then barely touched it again. I think he only had 2 or 3 more touches for the match and just couldn't find a way to get himself into the game. Joel Amati should have got a free kick. Well, he did get a free kick early, but advantage was paid to Hayward, who kicked the goal. And then he didn't get another kick until like the third quarter. He just couldn't get himself into the game at all. Ended up with like 7 touches or so, but just was not a performance that will be remembered from him. Logan McDonald got subbed out early with an injury. Went into the game with a little bit of an injury cloud and maybe another mistake twice in 3 years from Sydney playing an injured player. But, he did nothing before he got subbed out. He just wasn't up to the task. There's no doubt about it. Midfielders, James Rowbottom, I think, was clearly their best player. 4th best player according to AAR rankings on the field. But he was really good. There's no doubt about it. He tackled the best on their team. He put the most pressure on. He won plenty of the ball. He was a shining light on a bleak day for the Sydney midfield, where the players are typically, that's their strongest part of their ground, and they just got smacked. But he was solid. Brodie Grundy, I think, was also very solid. He was ranked second on the ground according to the AAR ratings. He certainly got the better of Darcy Fort, but he didn't dominate the game as much as maybe he should have. So I gave him an 8 out of 10. He did well. He just didn't set the world on fire, which is what he needed to do. Errol Goulden was solid without doing anything overly special. He did work quite hard compared to some others, or it seemed that way. He certainly wasn't at his best, but he performed okay, in all honesty. Chad Warner, likewise, was solid. I mean, he got a goal out of the centre in that last quarter, but his numbers were down, but so was everyone's. Luke Parker, his AFL rating is quite high at 14.7, but that's just because of his last quarter. I think he had 6 touches and 3 goals or something ridiculous in the last quarter. He only had 14 touches, 3 goals for the match, so did a bulk of his work in that last quarter when the game was dead. He was solid. He did okay, but his first 3 quarters he didn't do much. So I've given him a 5, and that's maybe generous because his first 3 quarters he didn't do a hell of a lot, but that's football. Jake Lloyd was okay, not great. Isaac Heaney apparently carried an injury, a stress fracture into the game and in his ankle, and just he did not perform. There's no doubt about it. He kicked a goal. He was winning a little bit of the ball. He didn't. I don't know even if he went on in the last quarter or not, but he was not at his best, and a major reason they did no good in this game was the fact that he just only had 14 touches, no doubt about it. He's been their best player all year, so a disappointing end to his season. McInerney, we didn't see much of him. Braden Campbell was the starting sub. He came on, I can't remember if it was at half time maybe. Did okay. Didn't show up much though, in all honesty. He played quite a lot of minutes and didn't get a lot of the football. We now jump into the winning team. This is the Brisbane Lions. This is their defence. We start at the top. Harris Andrews. I gave him a 9.5 out of 10. His AAR rating doesn't look that high, but I don't think he put a foot wrong all day. Like, his disposal was really good when he touched it. He made good decisions all day. I can't think of one mistake he made. He was really good. Dane Zorko, plenty of the ball. Used it well, as you'd expect. He's a great player. I gave him a 9. Starcevic, similar to Harris Andrews, in all honesty, did a really good performance. Obviously, last year got matched up on Bobby Hill for a fair bit, but this year took care of Papley. No trouble at all. A great performance from him. Lester was solid. Didn't do anything wrong. Same with Payne. Like, these guys just all did their jobs. None of the Sydney forwards did anything all day. So all these guys did probably deserve a better rating than I gave him, in all honesty. Fletcher was solid. Ainsworth did his job, no doubt about it. Wilmot was really good. And Connor McKenna was sub. Came on with like 5 minutes to go, 10 minutes to go. I gave him a rating of 5, but I mean, he came on with 10 minutes to go in a game when they're 60 points up, so there's not a lot he could have done. Jump into the forward line, and did this forward line work or what? An unbelievable performance from the forward line. Callum Archie kicked 4 goals, had a couple goal assists, didn't do anything wrong all day. He was outstanding. I gave him a 9.5, slightly ahead of Lohman, just because of the work I think he did that kind of went unnoticed by a lot of people. Lohman did a lot of work early, kicked 4 goals in the first half. Archie was really good though as well. He even gave Lohman the first goal by passing it to him from when he was 45 out. Lohman, 4 goals, outstanding performance. What a future that kid has. He's been really good all final series, as has Archie, to be honest. They've both been outstanding. Joe Danaher could have been the greatest finals performance of all time. He just wasted a few opportunities in front of goal, which isn't the first time he's done that. Probably won't be the last. He's a great player. He played his role. He did everything. He was everywhere. Led the ground with score involvements, I believe, in the end. And yeah, just a really, really solid performance from him. Logan Morris got subbed out with 10 minutes to go, but he played really well. Maybe his best game I've seen him play sometimes he gets a little lost in games and just doesn't really find a way to impact it as much, but he was outstanding in this game, did everything he needed to, led well, marked strongly, kicked straight. Really good performance from him. Rayner was okay without being outstanding. He did okay. I think his second half was probably better than his first half. He wasn't really needed too much in that first half, though, in all honesty. Hipwood kicked an incredible goal. Go watch that. Probably goal of the day. He didn't do anything other than that goal too spectacular, but played his role. Charlie Cameron, another one that could have probably blown the game out even more in that first half, but just wasted a couple opportunities. Kicked a good goal, ends up Premiership player on his third attempt, I think. So a really good performance from him, but not the most perfect performance here. He hasn't been their best player all season long, though, in that forward line. It's really been a handing over of the mantle of top small forward for Brisbane all year, really, and he played his role, though. We now jump into the midfielders. We'll start with Lachie Neale. His game was outstanding. You'll never convince me that it wasn't insanely good. On first watching, I had Ashcroft as my Norm Smith medalist, but the more I watched Lachie Neale in the rewatch, he was outstanding. He had 35 touches, 18 contested, all of this on one leg, mind you, because he was limping big time after the game. He had just the one turnover, 7 intercepts, 1 goal assist, 11 score involvements, which is just one behind Joe Danaher, who had the most, 8 marks, 16 pressure acts, 6 centre clearances, 3 stoppage clearances, so 9 clearances total, 3 tackles, 6 inside 50s, 2 rebound 50s. Just an absolute performance of the ages from him. Last year's grand final, he probably was a little bit down on his usual performance. In all honesty, I think he only had 19 touches last year. He well and truly made up for that here. He went out there and just made sure they won this game. He was outstanding. Will Ashcroft, almost unanimous Norm Smith medalist. Don't get me wrong, I think he deserves it as well. Could have gone to any one of the 4 players, in my opinion. Neale, Ashcroft, Lohman or Archie. They were the 4 best players on the ground, no doubt about it. In all honesty, I'm happy with any one of those 4 getting the nod in Norm Smith. I think, personally, after rewatching the game, Lachie Neale was best on ground, but Will Ashcroft was outstanding as well. He did a lot of work, especially when the game needed to be won. He ended up, we'll have a look at his numbers as well, because they were quite impressive. 30 touches, 9 of those contested. 1 goal, which was in the second half, I believe. He had also 11 score involvements, so as many as Lachie Neale. He also had 5 clearances, 2 of those centre clearances, 3 tackles, 6 inside 50s. So an outstanding performance from him. Josh Dunkley was really good, especially defensively. Was probably their best defensive mid in this one. Jared Berry was really solid as well. He had a good game. McCluggage played his role. A long way down on what he performed like last year in the grand final, but this year he wasn't needed as much. He was solid. Darcy Fort obviously came in as the ruckman. He got beaten, no doubt, by Grundy, but not by as much as maybe Grundy should have, and therefore he rates okay, 5.5. I gave him a solid performance without doing anything miraculous, but he played his role, knew his role, played his role. Zach Bailey, he was okay. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't win a lot of the football, but once again, wasn't really needed, was it? That is every player graded, ranked, and yeah, that's grand final review. Final thoughts. Great season by Brisbane. They've come from nowhere a couple times in this final series, and then they just got the job done in a near perfect performance. That's almost as good a performance as they could have hoped for in the grand final. An outstanding finish to their year. Sydney, they were the best team all year, and they just couldn't finish it off when it mattered. So disappointing for them. we'll go more into the seasons of both teams. Coming up this week, we will have a review episode for both teams. It's 2 separate episodes. Going live on the YouTube this week, probably Tuesday for Sydney, Wednesday for Brisbane. As always, we'll have the podcast twice this week, as every week. Mondays, we'll be looking at AFLW. Fridays, we look at the AFL Men's. That will continue on until after trade week, and then we might alter the schedule a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. So check that out. That goes live every Monday and Friday on YouTube and Spotify. Check out all the socials. Check out all the videos on YouTube. I've got a ton of content out right now. I've been working over the last month to get these videos out. So go check them out, especially all the season reviews for each team. I think there's some really good information in there. So go check it out. Plenty more content coming out this week, so don't forget to subscribe. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.